In today's video, we're shining a spotlight on some of the most underrated German generals of World War II. These generals, often overshadowed by their more charismatic colleagues, played pivotal roles in shaping the course of history. They were not just military strategists, but also complex characters whose decisions had far-reaching impacts. They achieved remarkable successes on the battlefield, while also remaining controversial figures to this day. Join us as we explore what made these generals successful, the strategies they employed, and why they should have gotten more credit than they did. Hermann Balck. Born into a military family, Balck served with distinction in World War I, where he established a solid foundation in military tactics and command. However, it was during World War II that his capabilities were most prominently displayed. One of Balck's most notable achievements emerged while commanding armored units on both the Eastern and Western fronts. His leadership of the 11th Panzer Division during the Stalingrad campaign and the subsequent actions in France, and on the Western Front, underscored his skills in executing highly effective mobile warfare, which became a defining characteristic of his military approach. Balck's skills were most evident because of his application of blitzkrieg tactics, which emphasized speed, surprise, and decisive action. His leadership during the Third Battle of Kharkov in 1943, for instance, exemplified his capacity to alter the course of a battle through rapid and flexible maneuvering of his forces. Balck successfully recaptured the city of Kharkov from the Soviet forces, a victory that significantly boosted German morale and delayed Soviet advances. His success was not merely a result of following orders, but also from his profound understanding of battlefield dynamics and taking calculated risks. One of Balck's most notable strengths was his ability to inspire and lead his troops under the most challenging conditions. His leadership style was exemplified by his constant presence on the front lines, where he often faced the same dangers and hardships as his soldiers. This hands-on approach not only significantly boosted the morale of his men, but also allowed him to make real-time decisions informed by first-hand observations of the battlefield. Balck's courage and leadership garnered the respect and loyalty of his subordinates, which was crucial in maintaining the effectiveness and cohesion of his units. Despite his remarkable achievements, Hermann Balck remained an underrated general. The rise of figures such as Erwin Rommel and Heinz Guderian overshadowed Balck's contributions. These generals received more attention due to their early successes and charismatic personalities. In contrast, Balck, who was more reserved and less politically connected, and because of that did not receive the same level of recognition, despite his equally significant contributions to German military successes. Erhard Raus. Born on January 8, 1889, in Wolframitz, then part of Austria-Hungary, Raus embarked on a military career that spanned the tumultuous early decades of the 20th century. The newly formed Austrian Bundesheer, and later the Wehrmacht following the Anschluss to Germany in 1938. Raus's reputation as a highly capable general was formed during Operation Barbarossa, the German invasion of the Soviet Union in 1941. He commanded the 6th Panzer Division with distinction, showcasing his ability to adapt to the harsh conditions and the ever-changing dynamics on the Eastern Front. At the beginning of December 1941, Raus and his Panzer Division had advanced to just 14 kilometers from the outskirts of Moscow. Facing the brutal Soviet winter, Raus showcased remarkable leadership and quick thinking. He ordered his troops to blast holes into the frozen ground, creating shelters that could accommodate 3 to 5 soldiers each. Within hours, the men were entrenched, ready to fend off further Soviet assaults. Their newfound dugouts not only provided protection from the relentless attacks, but also helped them endure the harsh weather with significantly fewer casualties. Raus's decisive actions were instrumental in the division's survival. His leadership during the battles of Kursk and Kharkov in 1943 highlighted his skill in managing armored divisions under intense pressure. Despite being on the losing side, Raus's talent in executing strategic withdrawals and regrouping maneuvers underscored his tactical insight. He was once more in retreat, guiding his men from Kharkov back to the Dnieper River. Throughout his journey, they faced unrelenting Soviet assaults. It wasn't until the 20th of September that they finally reached the safety of the bridgehead at the river. On December 10, 1943, he was appointed acting commander of the 4th Panzer Army. The first test of his new command was to halt the Soviet Christmas offensive launched on December 24th. Raus halted the Soviet offensive and achieved a major defensive success despite losing many men and being pushed back around 100 kilometers. He prevented a Soviet breakthrough, although he admitted that General Hermann Balck's Panzer Corps played a key role in stopping the Soviet attack. In February 1945, Hitler transferred Raus to command the 11th SS Panzer Corps in the Pomeranian area. When the Soviet Union crossed the border, Hitler relieved Raus from command. After the war, Raus was captured by American forces and held as a prisoner of war until 1947. His post-war years were dedicated to documenting and analyzing the military history of the Eastern Front. His writings, including the notable book Panzer Operations, provide a detailed account of his experiences and offer insights into strategic analysis of tank tactics and German military strategy and operations. Gotthard Heinrici. Gotthard Heinrici is often described as one of the most brilliant defensive strategists of the Wehrmacht. Heinrici's story is one of skill, integrity, and the moral dilemmas inherent in serving a regime such as Nazi Germany's. Heinrici came from a family with a strong military tradition, setting the stage for his lifelong dedication to military service. He joined the Prussian army in 1905, and by the outbreak of World War I, Heinrici had already established himself as a capable officer. His service on both the Eastern and Western fronts during the Great War earned him the Iron Cross First Class. Heinrici's commitment to his faith and his refusal to join the Nazi Party made him unpopular with the Nazi leadership and led to numerous confrontations with Hitler and Hermann Göring, who openly mocked him. Since Heinrici's wife had a Jewish parent, their children were classified as partly Jewish under Nazi racial laws. However, Heinrici received a German blood certificate from Hitler himself, which ostensibly affirmed their Aryan status and shielded them from discrimination. Heinrici came into the spotlight when he was repeatedly tasked with commanding defensive operations against overwhelming odds. His leadership during the Soviet winter counteroffensive of 1941-42, while commanding the Fourth Army, demonstrated his ability to manage retreats and establish effective defensive lines, minimizing losses even under pressure to hold ground. During the Fourth Army's retreat, it significantly slowed the progress of the advancing Red Army, inflicting severe casualties. These strategic successes greatly enhanced Heinrici's reputation as a master of defensive tactics. In 1943, Heinrici faced a moral dilemma when he refused direct orders to destroy the city of Smolensk by fire before the German army's withdrawal. This act of defiance led to his temporary dismissal from his command position. Heinrici's most notable command was during the Battle of Berlin in 1945. As the commander of Army Group Vistula, he withdrew his troops westward instead of defending the city. By late April, he ordered the retreat across the Oder River and was dismissed by Keitel for refusing to prioritize Hitler's safety. Summoned to Berlin, Heinrici intended to comply, but Captain Helmuth Lang convinced him to drive as slowly as you can to Plön instead, warning that he would face the same fate as Rommel, who had been Heinrici's adjutant and later Lang's commander. Consequently, Heinrici surrendered to British forces at Plön. Walther Wenck. Walther Wenck embarked on his military career amidst the turmoil of the First World War. At the outbreak of the Second World War, Wenck had established himself as a seasoned officer, distinguished by his tactical intelligence and leadership capabilities. His involvement in various campaigns solidified his reputation as a competent and dependable commander. By early 1945, he had risen to the rank of one of the youngest generals in the German army. On 10th of April 1945, Wenck was appointed commander of the German 12th Army, positioned to the west of Berlin to defend against the advancing American and British forces. As the Western Front advanced eastward and the Eastern Front progressed westward, the German armies on both fronts converged. Consequently, the areas under Wenck's command, particularly to his rear and east of the Elbe River, transformed into an extensive refugee camp for Germans fleeing the approaching Soviet army. Wenck made significant efforts to provide sustenance and shelter for these refugees. At one point, it was estimated that the 12th Army was feeding more than 250,000 people a day. Despite the grim situation, Wenck's maneuvers temporarily relieved some pressure on the German forces trapped in Berlin and delayed the Soviet advance. However, he quickly realized that further attempts to reach Berlin would be futile and would result in unnecessary casualties. Instead of continuing the offensive, Wenck directed his forces to establish a defensive perimeter and concentrate on facilitating the evacuation of civilians and wounded soldiers from the encircled regions. This enabled tens of thousands of civilians and soldiers to escape westward, ultimately reaching the safety of the American lines and avoiding capture by Soviet forces. Wenck urged his troops, saying, "Comrades, we must go in once more. It's no longer about Berlin, nor about the Reich. Wenck was captured by the US Army and released in 1947. In 1957, Wenck was offered the position of Inspector General of the Bundeswehr, but declined. Tragically, on 1st of May 1982, Wenck was killed in a car accident in Austria when his vehicle struck a tree. Hermann Hoth. Hermann Hoth is one of the most studied military leaders, known for his tactical brilliance on the battlefield and infamous for his involvement in Nazi war crimes. As a general in the Wehrmacht, Hoth showed remarkable strategic expertise, which significantly contributed to crucial campaigns on the Eastern Front. Nonetheless, his participation in the atrocities perpetrated by the Nazi regime tainted his legacy. At the onset of World War II, Hoth assumed command of the 15th Army Corps, directing the German invasions of Poland and France. In 1941, he led the 3rd Panzer Group during Operation Barbarossa, playing a critical role in the destruction of several Soviet armies. While Hoth's military accomplishments are significant, they are overshadowed by his complicity in the crimes of the Nazi regime. Like many high-ranking officers in the Wehrmacht, Hoth was involved in the implementation of brutal policies against civilians, particularly in occupied Soviet territories. His units were implicated in numerous atrocities, including the mass murder of Jews and other civilians as part of the Nazis' genocidal policies. During the Wehrmacht's 1942 summer offensive, Hoth led the 4th Panzer Army and participated in the Battle of Stalingrad. Despite his efforts, his attempts to relieve the encircled 6th Army at Stalingrad in November 1942 was unsuccessful. Subsequently, Hoth participated in the 3rd Battle of Kharkov and the Battle of Kursk, while increasingly suffering from near exhaustion. He managed the German defense in eastern Ukraine during the Battle of the Dnieper, but was dismissed by Adolf Hitler following the unexpected Soviet recapture of Kyiv in November 1943. For the remainder of the war, Hoth was largely relegated to insignificant positions. Well, that's it. We hope you enjoyed our video. So which German general do you think doesn't get the credit they deserve? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Also remember to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more fascinating history content. Thanks for watching, and until next time.